Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing an old meta titan that is back and incredibly strong in this current meta, and that is non-Shadow Feraligatr. The team I ran today was Shadow Scizor, Feraligatr as the save switch, and Azumarill as the closer, and the team worked amazingly. I had tanked out of the 2900s running Torterra, and this team got me right back into the 2900s with an 8-2 run up to 29-23 ELO. Good leads, bad leads, this team felt like it could handle just about anything. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and we get the best possible lead in game number 1, Shadow Scizor into Alolan Ninetales. My opponent save switches into Greninja, and I have a really good response available for Greninja with my Azumarill. I bank a ton of energy on the Scizor in case I need it for later, and now I just get to bring out the Azumarill. Azumarill is going to be losing charge attack priority by a massive amount, but that's very okay, because Azumarill is here to just absorb energy from this Greninja. Play Rough is going to be shielded. My opponent has enough of an energy head start that they should be able to double up here, and that means that if I want this Play Rough, I'm going to have to give a shield back. However, I honestly feel pretty comfortable with that, because if my opponent double shields for switch advantage, then my Feraligatr should be able to sweep. And if they let it go, then I have switch advantage, which is Scizor on an Alolan Ninetales. They let it through, in comes the Alolan Ninetales, they are on Powder Snow, which means they cannot farm down. Very nice overfarm by my opponent as they CMP tie Weather Ball to my Play Rough to deny my energy. But back in comes Scizor in the back, is Unova Stunfisk. The one thing this team is a little bit soft to is Pokemon with electric damage. However, this entire team can hit Stunfisk for super effective damage, so Stunfisk doesn't end up being a huge issue. My opponent will go for the Mud Bomb, and here I'm just going to CMP tie a Night Slash to their Mud Bomb. This should put them into perfect 5 Shadow Claw farm down range for my Feraligatr, which means that this is just game over, because Feraligatr will get a very nice energy head start. My opponent realizes that unfortunately they're just getting farmed, and now they send in the Ninetales to immediately get hit with the Hydro Cannon. Now my opponent will get a Dazzling Gleam. If I was the Shadow Feraligatr, I could be in trouble, but the regular Feraligatr, part of why it's nice is the extra bulk. We tank that move, we farm everything down, and we take the win. Great lead in the next match, Shadow Scizor into Pangoro. Pangoro really does not like the Scizor matchup. The thing I have to watch for is, will my opponent try and go for a Trailblaze catch? As a lot of Pangoros will have a Corviknight in the back, and there it is. In comes the Corviknight, I get to bank so much energy on the Scizor, and then send in Azumarill. Azumarill is such a powerful answer to a Corviknight save switch because it forces Corviknight to throw Air Cutter. My opponent does get some really good luck by getting the Air Cutter boost on their very first try. That does make the matchup a lot closer for the Corviknight, but for Azumarill, I'm very happy just to use it as a damage sponge. I'm never going to be shielding my Azumarill. The entire goal of this pivot is just to get a ton of Scizor energy, as Scizor energy is incredibly good. My opponent is going to overfarm to the absolute max, CMP tying an Air Cutter with the Ice Beam, but Azumarill is too bulky. We're able to withstand that damage. Ice Beam will be able to take the knockout if my opponent decides to let that through, which they do. In comes Pangoro. Pangoro gets that farm down, and now I get to bring back in Scizor. Scizor, I just go for the Trailblaze. I want the knockout. Opponent is going to let that through. In the back is Jellicent, and this game is a win. As non-Shadow Feraligatr can survive a Shadow Ball, so I can bring in the Feraligatr. I still have energy and quite a bit of health on the Scizor as well. I should always shield the first here, because if I no-shield a Shadow Ball, then I'm going to end up shielding a Surf. So to me, the correct play is just to always shield. And these Shadow Claws have already done so much damage to this Jellicent. Jellicent already basically lost their entire health bar thanks to this Feraligatr. Another Hydro Cannon coming out from the Feraligatr. My opponent throws the Shadow Ball. They have to hope that it's going to knock out, but it simply will not. Feraligatr survives. We survive that Hex as well to get to another Hydro Cannon. Even if I didn't, I still have a bunch of energy on the Scizor, but we're able to take down that Jellicent and take the win. Tricky lead in the next match, Shadow Scizor into Feraligatr. It appears other trainers are recognizing that Feraligatr is pretty strong right now. This is not a comfortable matchup for Scizor, because anytime Scizor's in a matchup where Bullet Punch is resisted, it's probably going to struggle. However, I don't necessarily need to win this lead. I want to use this lead as a springboard to set up my Feraligatr to try and sweep them. So I get the CMP tie Night Slash to Hydro Cannon, and this is perfect, because now I can just let the Scizor go and send out the Feraligatr. In comes Feraligatr. I get a 3 Shadow Claw head start. Their water resist is hopefully out of the way. They're thinking about it. and they bring out a second water type in Empoleon. Teams on leaderboards oftentimes can be very unbalanced, like ABA-style teams, just because a lot of the times not having a readable team ends up being a pretty big advantage. Drill Peck is going to connect, I can overfarm, and then throw off the Hydro Cannon. If they shield, that tells me they're worried about the Feraligatr energy, and if they're worried about the Feraligatr energy, I'm going to make a bit of a weird play, and that is switching Azumarill into Empoleon. Normally, this is a nightmare matchup for the Azumarill, but the Empoleon is already so low with all the damage that I did from the Feraligatr that I can just use Azumarill as a damage sponge. Azumarill is more than happy to just absorb Drill Peck after Drill Peck. In the back, they have Diggersby, and that's why they could not bring in their third Pokemon, because the Diggersby just gets absolutely shredded by this entire team, specifically the backline. Ice Beam after Ice Beam is going to land onto that Diggersby. My best fast move pressure into the Diggersby is going to be with the Azumarill, so I will put up the shield as they go for the Scorching Sands, and now this is just game over. My opponent realizes it, and they will resign the match. Shadow Scizor into Shadow Scizor. Very happy to see this lead here, but the moment it starts playing out, I realize I'm getting break pointed in the mirror. Look at our health bars. I'm taking more damage from them than I'm doing to them, so that's actually really bad. This forces me to go for a Trailblaze to try and keep up. They do shield the Trailblaze. Normally, if you Trailblaze in the mirror, you can end up winning the mirror, but unfortunately, for whatever reason, I'm getting break pointed pretty severely, so it actually ends up being a simultaneous knockout, but I'm just down a shield. So that went about as poorly as it could have gone. I'm going to bring in the Feraligatr, and my opponent brings in Azumarill. So far, we have very, very similar teams. I farm up a ton of energy, and I get a catch of the Play Rough onto Azumarill. Importantly, I timed it so I also got a Bubble Sneak, and in the back, they have Dusclops. Somehow, despite the fact that I played out a mirror lead, and it ended up a simul KO with me down a shield, I feel like I'm in a pretty okay spot. I have an insane amount of energy on the Feraligatr, and Azumarill does a great job at absorbing energy from Dusclops. Dusclops overfarming quite a bit, going for the Shadow Punch, but Shadow Punch just does so little to Azumarill. They CMP tie, they're hoping against hope that a Shadow Punch will knock out, but look at those Azumarill IVs. We tank that Shadow Punch and get the last second Play Rough. Play Rough does get shielded, quick switch into Feraligatr, and Feraligatr already has the back-to-back Hydro Cannons loaded. Hydro Cannon is going to land, they barely survive, in comes Azumarill, and with this energy head start, we're about to see why Feraligatr was feared for so many seasons. Hydro Cannon after Hydro Cannon after Hydro Cannon, the spam is just absolutely unreal. Hydro lands, Feraligatr gets one final Hydro Cannon. My switch timer's up, so I can go for a catch, but at the same time, I know that a Play Rough just simply will not knock me out. So I just decide to stay on the field. Play Rough lands, in comes the Dusclops, they feint to the Shadow Claw, in comes Azumarill, we Shadow Claw down, and despite how catastrophic that lead matchup was, we're actually able to take the win. We see a familiar lead in the next match, Shadow Scizor into the Feraligatr. Again, as I mentioned, this is a meta trend that top players are picking up on. The fact that the non-Shadow Feraligatr, its survivability is actually really, really nice, and it can be a real core breaker to a lot of teams. So I'm going to play it the exact same way that I played it the first time, and that is just play the ones. CMP tie the Night Slash with their Hydro Cannon, and then just look to try and set up my Feraligatr as a sweeper. Last time, my opponent had a backline of Empoleon and Diggersby. So I'm curious if this trainer is running the same team, and it appears they are. So a team that is ABA water, so has a lot of weaknesses, but to be fair, I'm running a team that's very soft to electric. So on leaderboards, people just kind of run what they think is best because it doesn't necessarily have to beat every team, it just has to beat the teams that the other leaderboard players are playing. So I'm going to play it a very similar way. If they shield, I'm just going to bring out the Azumarill, as Azumarill is more than happy to absorb the Drill Pecks. Drill Peck does less than nothing. These bubbles never do a ton, but I'm just trying for whatever damage that I can possibly get. Another Drill Peck is going to connect, and Azumarill just simply does not care. I'll get to take the knockout with the Ice Beam. Ice Beam is double resisted, but the Empoleon is so low that it cannot survive. In the back, show me the Diggersby. It is the same team. So despite the fact that it's actually a very negative lead for us, like Feraligatr does great into Scizor, Our backline with the double water was very well positioned, and getting the energy lead on Feraligatr multiple times is proving to be a winning play. Another nice thing is, since Diggersby usage is picking up just a little bit with how much Corsola is being played, is the regular Feraligatr straight up beats the Diggersby, whereas the Shadow does lose to it. Here we've got a massive problem in the next match, because this is Jason2890, one of the best battlers in the world, and he's running a Pokemon that I'm triple weak to in Volt Switch Fortress. Volt Switch Fortress, an incredibly cool anti-meta pick, and unfortunately, it's basically my team's worst nightmare. Rock Tombs will inflict huge damage and debuffs at that, so this is going to be a very tough game to win. Night Slash is going to be shielded. I throw one, I switch into the Azumarill, and I end up intentionally transferring that Volt Switch damage onto the Azumarill. Now, transferring a fast move from where it was neutral to where it's super effective might seem like a misplay, but with the huge difference in bulk from Azumarill to Scizor, I think it's actually the right play. I think health on the Scizor could actually be quite valuable. I end up going for the Play Rough. My opponent overfarms quite a bit, but they should be in 2 Bullet Punch range, which means they're not going to get access to their Chilling Water. So that's a big farm down for me, and now I exit with quite a lot of energy. Unfortunately, I do not have a move banked. Having a move banked would be nice because I could go for the Cap Tie against the Fortress, but unfortunately, I do not. Fortress goes for the Rock Tomb. I'm firing off this Night Slash. I just want them to no shield. I need this Pokemon gone, but they will put up the shield. There's the switch into Dugong. I will get a last second Night Slash, and this is going to be a very tricky game. Not only am I going to need several Hydro Cannons to knock out the Dugong, so 2 Hydro Cannons there, I'm going to need to exit with a 3rd Hydro Cannon banked, because otherwise I have no way of beating that Fortress. So I'm going to need very precise energy management with the Feraligatr. Hydro Cannon is going to land. Feraligatr going to get hit with another Drill Run. Can I hang on here? I have decent IVs, but not the best, and I can't get the double up that I need. So unfortunately, we will lose that game. Picking up a terrible lead in the next match, Shadow Scizor into Talonflame. I safe switch into Feraligatr. Opponent sends out Diggersby. Diggersby is an answer to a Shadow Feraligatr, but it is not an answer to a non-Shadow Feraligatr. I'm going to put so much pressure onto this Diggersby. I can very easily flip switch, and flipping switch should be incredibly vital for me, as that's realistically the way that I'm going to have a chance at this game, because I can't have Scizor on Talonflame and hope to have any kind of success. I do get a CMP tie, which is really nice. Hydro Cannon onto the Scorching Sands. My opponent double shields. They really want Switch advantage, but even though it leaves my Scizor defenseless, I have to put up the shield. They Fire Punch bait. I go for the Cap Tie on the Scorching Sands, but they actually end up settling for a Fire Punch. Fire Punch is going to land. I overfarm. I was hoping that I could live 3 quick attacks and then leave 1 off the Hydro, but unfortunately, I do not. And that's bad news for me, as when they bring in the Talonflame, I'm not going to get this Hydro Cannon, as I'm 2 away. And I would get to click it on turn 5. So a bit unfortunate. If I again had a slightly better Feraligatr, I could have been in a significantly better spot, but I still have switch advantage. Brave Bird is going to connect. That's big damage. And here what I should do is just queue up a switch into the Scizor. But I don't. I throw a bubble, and that costs me the game because I get outpaced. My opponent could have made the Water Pulse before I was able to get to my Trailblaze, and Water Pulse would have KO'd. They're going to fire off the Water Pulse now, taking the knockout, and they actually have Earth Power. Oh no! And unfortunately, I could have won. To be fair, no one runs Earth Power, so I had to play to getting some damage before the Water Pulse. Even so, if I had just queued the switch into Scizor and not thrown the bubble when Gastrodon came in, I still could have won that game. Tough lead in the next match, Shadow Scizor into Unova Stunfisk, so I may as well safe switch into the Azumarill. Azumarill doesn't take much from Discharge, and if they stay in, I'll get some nice damage with Ice Beam. My opponent pivots out into Togekiss, and there is exactly one reason why they would do that. They must be double weak in the back to Scizor, and if they let the Stunfisk get too low, then they're just not going to have a way to beat it. Here, I very carefully farm up to put them into 1 Bullet Punch range because Switch Clocks are misaligned, and I snipe down all their energy with Scizor. They bring back in the Stunfisk, but the damage is already done. I have a Scizor that's up energy, I'm up a shield, and Scizor, I'm pretty confident, is about to sweep. Scizor going for the Trailblaze, just looking to put the dagger into this Stunfisk. Stunfisk puts the shield right back up, but now I'm boosted. Now they're definitely getting knocked out by the Trailblaze. So I will overfarm by 1, CMP tie with the Trailblaze, and a +1 super effective Trailblaze. You know that's knocking out. In the back is Pangoro, so they were weak in the back to Scizor, as Pangoro has a pretty terrible matchup. I throw the Night Slash, it's double boosted, so even though it's double resisted, it still does a decent amount of damage. Pangoro, Night Slash, they're hoping for a boost, but they will not get it, and I just get to send in the Azumarill. Azumarill, more than happy to absorb whatever they throw, and then I can clean up with the Gator. It's actually a Rock Slide Pangoro, interestingly enough. In comes Feraligatr, and my opponent will resign the match. Hopping into the final match, leading Shadow Scizor into Kanto Marowak. Another benefit of the regular Feraligatr is Shadow Feraligatr loses to Marowak. Marowak just farms it down to the 2s. But the regular Feraligatr, it cannot get farmed down. So it's actually a pretty safe switch in to a Marowak lead. Marowak gets the shield back with the Bone Club, out comes Fortress, and anytime I see Marowak lead with Fortress in the back, I automatically assume the third will be Bastiodon or Carbink. Hydro Cannon lands, that does some pretty nice damage, and considering I'm expecting it's a rock type in the back, I'm going to save that Hydro Cannon, as it should be super effective into all of their Pokemon that are not named Fortress. I bring in a Azumarill just to absorb energy, because if it is Carbink, then I'm going to need the Scizor. Here, I will go for a bit of an undercharge on an Ice Beam and a Farm Down, although I'm double debuffed, so I may not even need an undercharge. So I will just full charge that Ice Beam. I don't have Hydro Pump. In comes Carbink, and they knew they were in trouble. In comes Scizor, and Scizor just gets to completely run away with this game now. Trailblaze will be knocking out the Carbink. They let it go, hoping to survive. I have the Hydro banked, I still have the Azumarill, and they will resign the match. All in all, I did end up having a ton of fun with this team. As I mentioned at the start, I feel like this team put me in a pretty winnable position in most every game. The one game that felt the toughest to win was against the Volt Switch Fortress. If you run into a Pokemon that has electric typing, or that has electric damage that's not named Stunfisk, that could be a little bit awkward for this team to deal with. But I really liked the fact that Feraligatr, even when I didn't have switch advantage, felt like it was incredibly flexible. And that's something that I'm constantly searching for in these new metas that are obviously updating and evolving over time as we start to figure out what's good and certain meta trends rise and fall, is figuring out what Pokemon can offer neutral play. And I really feel like Feraligatr is one of them. Feraligatr, it really wasn't a big fan of the rise of Lapras, but with Lapras, usage definitely on a downward swing, I think there's room for Feraligatr, and the fact that my opponents were using a lot of Feraligatr as well, I think is a pretty good indication that Feraligatr, I think it might be back. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is genuinely so appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.